Your tomatoes have holes in them again. You checked them yesterday. They looked fine. This morning, you walked outside with your coffee and something had been there before you. The leaves are chewed through. There are small dark spots on the stems. The soil around the base looks disturbed. And somewhere underneath, something is eating the roots you cannot even see. You went to Home Depot last week. You spent $23 on a spray bottle with a skull on the label. You read the instructions, you mixed it correctly. You sprayed every plant, you waited. And this morning you are standing in the same garden, looking at the same damage, wondering what you are doing wrong. You are not doing anything wrong. You are just using the wrong product. A product that was designed to be bought again and again. The pest control industry in America generates $22 billion a year. $22 billion. And the business model is simple. A product that solves your problem permanently is a product you buy once. A product that manages your problem just enough to keep you coming back is a product you buy every single season for the rest of your life. Think about which one they are motivated to sell you. Your grandmother did not have a Home Depot. She did not have a spray bottle with a skull on the label. She had a 1/4 acre of Kentucky clay soil, 6 mouths to feed, and $0 for pest control. And her garden never failed. Not once in 50 years of growing, not during the Dust Bowl, not during the drought of 1936, not during the years when half the farms in her county went under. What she used cost $1. You can find it at Walmart right now. It has been sitting on the same shelf for decades, right next to the products that do not work. And almost nobody picks it up because nobody told them what it actually does. No advertising, no garden influencer getting paid to hold it up on camera. No sponsored content pushing it to the top of your feed. Just a quiet bag on a quiet shelf, doing exactly what it has always done. One application around every plant once a week. No chemicals, no smell, no protective gear. Safe for children, safe for pets, safe for every earthworm in your soil. And every pest that walks across it, every aphid, every slug, every beetle, every cutworm dies within 48 hours. Not from poison, from something far simpler and far older than anything on that Home Depot shelf. I found out about this from a journal my grandmother kept between 1938 and 1944. She was born in 1919 outside of Harlan, Kentucky, small town, red clay soil. The kind of soil most gardeners today would look at and give up on immediately. They grew everything they ate. Tomatoes, beans, squash, corn, potatoes, greens, everything on a 1/4 acre, with no money for anything that came in a bottle. In the journal, she described what she called the white dust. She wrote about it the way you would write about something so obvious it barely needed explaining. She wrote, and I am reading this directly from the journal, "Mama put the white dust around every bed before the rains came. We never lost a crop to insects, not in the years I can remember." She wrote it in one sentence, like it was the most natural thing in the world. Because to her it was. I did not know what the white dust was for years. I read that entry a dozen times. I assumed it was some old home remedy that maybe worked on some insects sometimes. The kind of thing you nod at and move on from. I was wrong. 3 years ago, I was going through agricultural records at the University of Kentucky Library. I was looking for something else entirely, and I came across a USDA bulletin filed under Depression-era pest management, dated 1937, 86 pages. The kind of document that takes months to write and then disappears into an archive and never gets read again. This one had not been checked out since 1952. I sat in that library for 4 hours reading it. The bulletin documented something researchers had been studying since the late 1800s, a naturally occurring substance that had been used by farming communities across the American South, the Midwest, and going back further, by indigenous communities across the continent for hundreds of years before that. The USDA researchers tested it against 12 different pest species: aphids, slugs, beetles, cutworms, root flies, thrips, spider mites, whiteflies, 12 species, effective against all 12, no chemical residue on the plants. No harm to soil health, no harm to earthworms or beneficial insects that stayed below the soil line. The recommendation in the bulletin was straightforward: a thin ring around the base of every plant, about an inch wide, applied directly to the soil, reapplied after rain. Cost per season for a standard home garden, approximately $1. That bulletin was never reprinted. It was never incorporated into mainstream gardening guides. It was never featured in a magazine or a radio program or any of the channels that were teaching Americans how to garden in the post-war years. It sat in an archive in Kentucky for 80 years, while American families spent billions of dollars on products that did not work as well. The white dust is diatomaceous earth, and what it does to insects has nothing to do with chemistry. Under a microscope, diatomaceous earth looks like broken glass. It is made from the fossilized shells of microscopic organisms called diatoms, creatures that lived in ancient lakes and died millions of years ago. Their shells are made of silica, hard, jagged, sharp at a scale you cannot see with the naked eye, but that an insect encounters like a field of razor blades. When an insect walks through diatomaceous earth, those microscopic edges do one specific thing. They cut through the waxy outer layer of the insect's exoskeleton. That waxy layer, scientists call it the cuticle, is the only barrier keeping moisture inside the insect's body. It is the insect's entire defense against dehydration. Without it intact, the insect cannot regulate its internal moisture. It begins to dry out from the inside. Within 24 to 48 hours, it is dead. No poison entering the body, no chemical reaction, no nervous system disruption. Pure mechanical damage to a single layer of the insect's exterior. Physics, not chemistry. This is why it works on every insect regardless of species. It does not matter what the insect eats, or how its digestive system works, or whether it has developed resistance to a particular compound. Every insect has a waxy cuticle. Every waxy cuticle is vulnerable to the same mechanical damage. There is no resistance to physics, and this is why it is completely harmless to earthworms. Earthworms do not have a waxy exoskeleton. They have smooth, moist skin that the diatomaceous earth particles simply slide off. Your earthworms keep moving through the soil. Your soil health improves. Your beneficial insects that live underground stay completely unaffected. Only the pests that walk across the surface, ones actually damaging your plants, encounter the barrier and die. My grandmother understood none of this science. She did not need to. She knew that when she put the white dust around her plants, the insects stopped coming. She knew it had to be reapplied after a heavy rain. She knew the food-grade version was safe to use around everything she grew. 4 generations of women in her family had known these same 3 things. Knowledge passed down at kitchen tables and in handwritten journals, the way all the most useful knowledge traveled before there was money in selling you something instead. Now ask yourself a question. Why does your garden center have an entire wall of chemical sprays, a dedicated section of the store, staff trained to recommend specific products, sale tags and promotional displays, and somewhere in the back, on a low shelf with no signage, a quiet bag of white powder for $8 that lasts an entire growing season and outperforms everything on that wall? Diatomaceous earth cannot be patented. It comes out of the ground. Nobody owns the process. Nobody can charge a premium for the formula. Nobody can create a dependency by slightly adjusting the compound every few years so the pests develop resistance, and you have to buy the new version. Synthetic pesticides can be patented. The profit margin on a $23 bottle of chemical spray is significant. The advertising budget behind it is significant. The relationships between pesticide manufacturers and major garden retailers are significant. In 2022 alone, the top 5 pesticide manufacturers spent a combined $340 million on consumer marketing in North America. That money did not go toward telling you about a $1 solution that your grandmother already knew. The USDA stopped featuring diatomaceous earth in their public home gardening recommendations in 1951, 4 years after DDT became commercially available for home garden use. 6 years after the first synthetic pesticide patents were filed by companies that would go on to become the largest agricultural chemical corporations in the world. I am not drawing a conclusion for you. I am giving you the dates. You can draw your own. Here is exactly what my grandmother did, step by step, exactly as she described it in the journal, and exactly as the 1937 USDA bulletin confirmed. Go to Walmart and buy food-grade diatomaceous earth. This is important. Food-grade, not pool-grade. Pool-grade diatomaceous earth has been chemically treated and is not safe around food plants. Food-grade is the original unprocessed version, the one that has been used in gardens and grain storage for over a century. At Walmart, it runs about $8 for a large bag. That bag will protect your entire garden for a full growing season. Apply a thin ring around the base of every plant, about an inch wide, directly on the soil surface. You are not digging it in. You are not mixing it with water. You are laying it on the surface like a barrier. Every insect that approaches your plant from the soil level, slugs coming in at night, beetles crossing the bed, cutworms moving toward the roots, crosses that barrier and begins to dehydrate. Reapply after every rain. This is the single step that most people skip. This is why most people who try diatomaceous earth say it does not work. Rain dissolves the barrier. A dry barrier is an active barrier. After every significant rain, walk your garden with the bag and reapply. It takes 10 minutes for an average home garden. This one habit is the difference between a garden that works and a garden that keeps failing. For plants that are already under active attack, aphids clustered on the undersides of leaves, beetles on the stems, visible insects on any part of the plant, dust a light layer directly on the affected area. The insects are already there. They cannot avoid contact. Within 48 hours, they are gone. The dust is safe to wash off before eating. It leaves no residue that penetrates the plant tissue. That is the entire method. No mixing ratios, no waiting period before harvest, no protective equipment, no reading the label 3 times to make sure you are not poisoning your own food. My grandmother grew enough food on a 1/4 acre of red clay soil to feed 6 people through every summer of the Great Depression. She grew food during the Dust Bowl while farms around her were failing. She grew food into her 70s. She never lost a crop to insects. She never spent $1 on pest control. She just knew what to put around her plants, where she learned it from, and why it worked. That knowledge was almost lost. It sat in a handwritten journal in a root cellar in Kentucky and in an unread government bulletin in a university library for 80 years, while American families spent $22 billion a year on products they did not need. If you want to know the other methods she used, the zero soil treatment that tripled her yields starting in year 2, the seed-saving method that made her completely independent from any garden center or any store, the water method that kept her crops alive through the drought years when neighbors lost everything. Subscribe. We find these methods, we verify them against the original documents, and we put out a new video every single day. And if you know someone who is still standing in their garden every summer watching their plants fail and spending money on bottles that do not work, share this with them. The information exists, it always has, it just got buried.